Hello, and thank you for being curious enough to join me again for the second section of my presentation, Finding Truth. It really does mean a lot to me that you would set aside this time to listen to what some random bloke on the internet has to say about philosophy, so again, thank you. In the previous section, I gave a brief overview of my obsession with truth and meaning and how it first came to be, and in this section I'd like to describe in more detail the initial experience that set all of this in motion. Now, I struggled for some time to find the right word with which to title this section, and there were several possibilities for it. Enlightening experience, transcendental experience, spiritual experience perhaps, but I felt that all of these give off a lofty sense of mysticism from which I have so dearly tried to steer clear. It was not really a mystical or spiritual experience, and I don't want to give off that impression. It was a distinctly intellectual experience. It was just that it conferred an intelligence that surpassed my then current capacity. Until very recently, I had titled this section My Life-Changing Experience because that is the most accurate way I can think of representing it, and its impact on me is the only thing that seems to be relevant. But in another sense, the term life-changing, while expressing its magnitude suitably, wasn't quite enough. While it certainly has changed my life, that change was merely a reaction to it. The true importance of the experience concerns the most basic facet of existence itself, and its implications are entirely unbounded. Transcendental experience is perhaps a more accurate term because it was an experience that transcended our usual subject-object duality. But the term my transcendental experience sounds just a bit too pompous for my liking. In the end, I settled for my revelatory experience, which seems to be a good middle ground. While this word does have some religious connotations attached to it, the sense in which I'm using it is as the standard definition of the term, the revealing of something previously unknown, or at least unknown consciously. Anyway, with that said, please allow me to attempt elucidation of the experience to the best of my ability. So, the experience occurred around December of 2012, and in the years preceding it I had been progressing ever further down a rabbit hole of existential meaninglessness. I was always a big reader, and various works by authors such as Richard Dawkins and Christopher Hitchens had helped to solidify my view that life was inherently meaningless, and that we were little more than biological machines whose evolutionary path had aberrated to the point of self-reflective delusion. When I was a child, this perspective made me feel empowered because it recognized and accepted what I interpreted as the cold, hard truth of existence, and this allowed for a certain sense of freedom where one is able to place value where one pleases at will. Furthermore, the mere fact that one is living and having this experience, in the face of its innate meaninglessness and improbability, provided a feeling of amazement and wonder that verges on the miraculous. Surely it would have been so much easier for there just to have been nothing at all. Existence requires so much effort. This is likely part of the reason why there are so many nihilists in the physical sciences. Our being seems to defy its own entropy, and this makes it interesting. Another part of the reason, I think, why nihilists enjoy physical science is that there is a distinct impression of intellectual superiority which spawns from this type of mindset over those that the nihilist views as being bound by the indoctrinating clasp of religious or spiritual dogmas. Science gives power to this impression. I too was once subject to this view towards those who appeared less rational than I. However, though I was unaware of the root cause at the time, my nihilism eventually began to give way to apathy and disinterest. The satisfaction I once felt from placing value on experience artificially began to fracture, and the pointlessness of my actions was beginning to be revealed beneath. As I approached the end of my teens, my meaning had crumbled entirely. Stature was no longer worth it. Power, money, no longer worth it. I had no choice but to face up to the cold, hard truth of my existence. There is no reason for my being. I arrived here by fluke. Anything I do is insignificant. Anything I gain will be recovered. Anything that I achieve will be forgotten, as I shall be forgotten in the end. It's not difficult to understand how I fell into a rut during this time. I'd asked the question why and met only silence in return, and with this I'd lost my reason for being. The most difficult symptom of this variety of melancholy, at least as it occurs in intuitive types, is its own self-indulgence. As one turns their attention more and more inwards, one's thought processes begin to solidify until they finally dominate one's reality. The individual may then even begin to feel that it is right for them to feel dejected. They may even begin to enjoy it, as contradictory as that sounds. But this self-reinforcing introspection comes with one saving grace. It allows that individual to understand the structure of their own psychology in a way that would never be useful or of interest to most healthy individuals, and this is likely one thing that pushed me in the direction of this experience. At the close of 2012, I was reading Lawrence Krauss's A Universe from Nothing, a book that explores how it's possible for a meaningless universe to arise in the first place. Suffice to say that the book did not have the effect on me intended by the author, it being, in fact, the catalyst for my obsession. Krauss posited that certain phenomena present in empty space could allow for the generation of our universe out of nothing, defying the cosmological conjecture that out of nothing, nothing comes. But Krauss's conception of nothing wasn't what most people would think of when hearing the term nothing. Instead, it contained all of the laws of physics and the entire contents of quantum field theory. For Krauss, nothing was the absence of physicality in all its forms, but arguably still something. This didn't sit right with me at all. Existence without the physical, I thought, well, that was impossible. And where was this nothing yet still something? Where did that come from? And as my mind continued along this line of thought, it was as if time stopped moving just for a moment. And in that moment I saw clearly in my mind that this nothing yet still something was the pure source of meaning, of pure value, and it was bleeding into reality at every point of space, an interdependent, self-generating ocean of potential containing every experience that ever was and ever could be. And in that moment, I knew that reality existed because it is good to exist, that goodness and realness and knowledge of them both are one. It was like a distant memory. It was so obvious. It felt like something I knew in the womb, but which had been taught out of me. Yet, as I tell this to you now, I know that I can never portray the sheer level of understanding that I felt in that moment. It was a pure knowing, deeper than any other I have felt. But as soon as I caught a clear sight of this meaning, it began to fall away and become obscured by the entrapments of the mind once more. I could not take the knowing with me, for my brain was simply incapable of recording the experience as a memory. It was like I had been transported to the precipice of understanding for an instant, and I have been crawling, inch by inch, up an ever-steepening mountain in my mind just to gain a glimpse of it again above me. But one can never truly reach it while remaining aware of the dualities of ordinary experience. Nevertheless, seeing it once was enough. All I had was a memory of a memory of a memory of nothing, but I knew it was there, and ever since I can almost taste it in my mouth. Hiding just behind the facade of phenomena, I can almost see it, I can sense it still, because it is imbued within my capacity to sense itself, as it is with all of yours. It was the single, most meaningful experience that a mind could possibly bear, for it was an experience of meaning itself, removed from anything in which it might be instantiated. Immediately I reached for pen and paper, intent on recording my experience as accurately as possible. But when I read this back, it sounded like the whimsical murmurings of the spiritual practitioners to whom I had grown so averse, and at once I appreciated the difficulty faced in attempting to encapsulate the immanent within the fragmented and dualistic terms of our language. How can one even begin to talk about something that is too commonplace to ever be compelling, too obvious to be observable, something that is so essential to every form and thing, living, inert and immaterial, that it's ignored and forgotten before we're able to ever notice it? How can one talk about that which holds this all together without merely saying, "It's right here, look at it"? It's not easy. We can't even define the word meaning without referring to itself, so how could I even begin to explain it? And if I couldn't explain it, how could I tell anyone about this experience who would believe me? It was such a contradictory experience because it was truly the epitome of simplicity. It was something that is so simple that it's impossible for us all not to know. But purely because of this, we don't. Everything else that is not so simple seems to obscure it from our view. It's like trying to tell a fish that it's swimming in water. "What's water?" the fish would surely respond. If there's nothing against which a thing is contrasted, then that thing might as well not exist at all. Yet, in the moment, I did feel that I understood the experience rationally, that there was some set of rational ideas that accurately correlated with the meaning. I just couldn't record these ideas within my brain. I would have to uncover them in an entirely different way, and thus began my obsession. Now, for many of you, what I have just described will be sufficient for relating my initial experience. Anything further begins to get rather more abstract, and I do not want to get ahead of myself. For others, however, this will not be enough, for I haven't really explained what it was that made me so sure of what I had perceived. I would be remiss to deny those of you who hunger for the intricate details regarding such matters from this information. Perhaps some of you are on your own special journeys of self-discovery and would find it quite useful. Perhaps others are skeptical about the magnitude or validity of the content of the experience and would like to put it under more scrutiny. In the following 3 sections, therefore, I will go into as much detail as I can possibly muster, but it will not harm your experience of this work if you would prefer to skip these sections. For those who are more averse to the abstruse and esoteric, I would recommend that you do skip them. I will refer back to these sections at a much later stage of this work and present another opportunity for you to watch them, for they may be more comprehensible at that point. With that said, I will conclude this section of my introduction. Thank you for being a part of this journey and for placing your faith in me, and I'll see you again in the next episode. I hope that you enjoy the rest of your day.